and as a leading voice in election integrity, certainly been involved in doing a lot of stuff around the state. I'm just very excited to hear from him today. This has been a great lineup on this topic here today, and I feel very honored to be here with him. Come join me in welcoming David Clements.
Hear me? Hello, there we go. Okay. Everyone find your seats, class is in session. Turn off your cell phones. I will deduct 1 point from your final grade for every ring. I kid. Who here by show of hands has no idea who I am? Be honest, please. Okay, there's one person. Anyone else? Okay, so most people know who I am, but for the camera, I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. Former law professor, former prosecutor. The operative word is former, because I've been canceled in just about every single way that you can imagine. There was a time where if you Googled my name, there was really good stuff. I was Prosecutor of the Year in New Mexico in 2016. I was a 2-time award winner of the Patricia Chrismore Teaching Excellence Award. And I got suspended from the university the day after I received their most prestigious award because I wouldn't subject our young people to the jab, to the mask mandate. And so I had a giant bullseye on my back for the better part of 2 years fighting against COVID and desperately trying to see if we could get Trump in, because my battle initially really wasn't elections, it wasn't COVID, it was the DEI woke monster, where I was told you have to treat someone a certain way and use their pronouns, and I came from a hardened prosecutorial background, and the idea that I had to call someone they or them was so asinine that it just wasn't going to happen. And so, hey folks in the back, either come sit down or go outside. Guys, I'll make it work for a while, but I didn't fly across the country to talk over you. Come on guys, in the back. In or out, in or out. In or out. I am a curmudgeon. Okay, I think we're almost there. So the background is this. Like, look, the university and my experience was all about trying to have some level of sanity and common sense come back. And if Trump didn't get in, I knew if Biden got in, it wasn't going to get better. It was going to be insanity on steroids. And we all know what happened on November 3rd, 2020. And my university president decided to say out loud that Trump supporters were behind a coup at the Capitol that was going to be achieved through zip ties. Now, I don't know if you've ever watched like terrorist movies like Die Hard or Die Hard 2. I've never seen anyone take over a country with zip ties. Fascinating. So I was on to my journey, and by standing up to my university president, I posted a video on YouTube, which was effectively my resignation to the world. Because it went viral. I went on Tucker Carlson's show and several others, and it just got to the point where now if you Google my name, it says all kinds of not so flattering things. And now 6 years later, I'm here, a little fatter, a little uglier, a little grayer, but I'm still here. And I think we've entered into an amazing period. So I am actually more optimistic than I have been in a long time. And I'm going to try to help you. I want to try to help you see what I see. So if you could bring up my digital postcard on the screen. Not number one. Just give me the whole thing. Close that out, because I'm not going to go in order. My brain doesn't work that way. Just leave it there. when I go around from state to state, and I talk with your politicians, and I talk with your experts or hopeful candidates, I carry with me this giant black cloud, because it's like, how bad do you want me to depress you? Because you're not going to lose your race because you don't have enough money or enough signs in people's yards. You're not going to lose your election because you don't have your canned talking points down. We are largely participating in political theater in our elections. What you're up against, go ahead and give me cell number 3. This is what you're up against. And some of you might be looking at this going, I don't know what that means, but I'm going to explain it to you. Go ahead and press pause if you would. Just press pause. Pause that video. This is a graphic that showcases a thing called a cast vote record summary. And this is an actual election that was run in my home state. We audited 8 different counties. And the idea of a cast vote record and why this record is vital, it's actually the best record that we've had access to determine whether or not someone has rigged a result within the black boxes. And we'll talk about Idaho and Washington's problem in getting these records. There's a reason why you can't get them, because they usually showcase massive systemic fraud. But the whole premise of what we can glean from this graph is based on this thing called the law of large numbers. Anybody here familiar with the law of large numbers? Okay, some of you. Okay, so let's give you context. Who here has ever participated in a poll? A scientific poll where perhaps it's get out the vote season and someone calls you up and they want to know who you're going to vote for. And the idea of what makes a poll scientific, it has to adhere to the law of large numbers. And the idea is this: what's the cumulative population for the state of Idaho? Just shout it out. 1 million people. Okay, that's a great round number. I love that. So the utility of a poll is you don't have to call up 1 million people to figure out where Idaho stands on a particular issue. You randomly sample 100 or 200. And the idea is over time, if you have a large enough sample set, you'll see the variability of where people stand start to flatline. So on this bottom portion of this graph, see how there's a wiggle before it flattens into a flat line? Wiggle. So before you get to about 200, you really don't know who's going to win because the random sample's too small. But once you get a large enough set, provided that it's random, it will flatline at about the same time or the same place every single time. So go ahead and play that. Just let it roll here. So when we look at elections, this is what you would want to see. This is what you want to see. This is what your cast vote record should look like. So go ahead and pause it again. This right here is the cumulative ratio of votes between Trump and Biden in the 2020 election. And we're only looking at early mail-in absentee ballots here. And there's a reason why we're only looking at early mail-in absentee, because we want to make sure that there's complete randomness. And the idea that we can ensure randomness is that none of you request your ballot at the same time. Not everyone fills out your ballot at the same time. Not all of you return your ballot at the same time, which means that the order in which they're received by the clerks should be absolutely random. Does that make sense? So it makes sense that as long as we have a random shuffle of these ballots, this is what we are seeing in the actual data with the flat line. So that's the law of large numbers come to life in your election record. Now, when we actually looked at the order of votes on how the election was actually run, it's the top visual. So go ahead and press play. Notice that there's an injection of ballots for the preferred candidate and a linear glide slope towards a predetermined outcome. Pause it again. So in order for this phenomenon to exist in real life, those randomly sorted mail-in ballots that just arrive in the clerk's box where you're going to run them through a tabulator, because they're just taking them out of a box and they're going to start scanning them through that black box from ES&S or whatever vendor you use. It doesn't matter which one. So in order to account for what we're seeing here, about the midpoint, down, you'd have like a batch of 100 votes. I think that's what we're looking at here. Well, this is 25 records each, but let's use a round number, like 100 votes. And the first ratio that we see between Trump and Biden is 90 for Biden, 10 for Trump. It's like, okay, well, that's just one batch. If it's random, it might be completely opposite the next batch that we get. And the next batch comes in and it's 89 for Biden, 11 for Trump. Okay, now that's kind of weird because we've now got the beginning of a glide slope. The next batch of ballots that are scanned through the tabulator show 88-12, then 87-13, 84-16, 85-15. So in order for this to emerge with that predictive linear drive towards a predetermined set point, that's how your randomly sorted and collected ballots would have to arrange themselves. Do you see how insane that is? So keep playing that, play the video. This is what you're up against. Now, I'm not telling you that this pattern is everywhere. We've examined about 1,000 counties worth of cast vote records. That's a lot. That's 1/3 of the counties. And in urban areas, we see this phenomena in all 50 states, where we can get them. That's what you're up against. And if your candidate doesn't have an answer for this, I can tell you why, for the most part, they're getting away. There's exceptions to all the rules. It's because okay, so something else showed up. You're fine. This is just to show you it's not just in the presidential race. This is a Senate race. But keep playing. And notice that you still have the same linear glide slope in the U.S. Senate race in my state. So it's not just Trump. And then this is in Arizona. The bottom one is a linear glide slope in, I want to say that's Pima County, Arizona. So we're finding this everywhere. And in Arizona, that curve that you just saw was in 16 out of 17 counties, the same exact curve. So this is the data that I look at from the machines. We're not guessing about whether your elections are rigged. Go ahead and close that out. We know it to the degree we can get these records and analyze them. So we're in Idaho. Do we have any cast vote records for analysis in Idaho? No. In fact, I was here several years ago when the vice president for ES&S and one of your crotchety clerks was talking about how they couldn't, their machines don't produce cast vote records. That's what they said. Now, if you put the vice president under oath, which they have, or the president of ES&S, they have testified truthfully that not only do their machines produce cast vote record summaries, they have to. Because under the law, under the Help America Vote Act, in order for you to receive federal funding, you got to be compliant with federal law, which requires that you have an auditable trail for your black boxes. Well, the auditable trail is the cast vote record summary. In fact, the NIST group, National Science, or it's like Weights and Measures, Institute of Science and Technology, or something like that. But they're the ones that basically create your accurate weights and measurements for the government. Put out a public document concerning cast vote records, and you know who they said the intended audience was? The public.
That's right.
It's for the public. But when you request these through a public records request, you get gaslit by a state attorney saying, no, we've got state law that says you can't have that. Well, that means you're violating federal law. And there's this thing called the Supremacy Clause, which makes that illegal. but we don't know because we're confused, right? So that's what you're up against. So when I talk to candidates where my eyes glaze over and I lose my patience with you, that's, how do you unpack that? I'm not even a math guy. I'm not Dr. Frank. I don't get excited by the data. Never in my life, if you saw my grades in high school, did I think I would be teaching you about the law of large numbers in PID controllers. It's ridiculous. So the title of my presentation is Meeting Trump in the Middle and Restoring Election Integrity. And historically, when I've come out to events, I've been trying to give the local groups kind of the we the people solution. How do we build this from the ground up, knowing that most of your politicians, I'm saying most because Teresa, you're wonderful. But everyone else, and so this pitch would have been very, very different if Biden or Kamala was in power right now. But they're not. That's why I'm optimistic. The pitch before was find out whoever certifies your black box, your tabulator, because they certify these defective products, these fraud facilitating machines. Learn more about the machine than they know. Confront them, expose them, and just put tremendous pressure so they can withhold certification to not deploy that black box for use in your elections. It's a very grounded, practical thing where you have vast numbers, and there's more of you than just one person that certifies the black box. The other group that I would have you target would be your canvassing board. And usually it's a de facto county commission or some mishmash of 3 to 5 people that after an election 2 weeks later, someone shows up with a canvassing report. It's your clerk, and they brag about how wonderful your elections are. And the way that they do it is like, okay, canvassing board, it's great to be here. What's your clerk's name here locally?
Locke.
Jennifer Locke. Is she one of your friends?
Not really.
Okay, that's what I thought. Jennifer Locke comes in like great news. Voter participation was wonderful. And we had all kinds of volunteers in the community come out to support us. And you were there. What's your name, ma'am? Yes.
Sandy.
Just play along. Sandy was a volunteer. And Sandy was handing out I voted stickers. Weren't you, Sandy? How many I voted stickers did you hand out, Sandy? Hundreds. Let's give Sandy a round of applause. And then everyone's getting kind of puffed up. Yeah, way to go. We like Sandy. And then your name, sir?
Mike.
Mike? Mike was a volunteer. Play along, please. Mike was handing out these wonderful felt tip pens so you could fill out your ballots. How many felt tip pens did you hand out, Mike? 200 felt tip pens. Round of applause for Mike. So they present their canvassing reports about voter turnout and engagement, and its stickers and its markers, and then they take a vote to certify the local results, and that's it. But what happens if you have an engaged community that's been looking at all the data for years, telling them this whole process is full of fraud? How do they shut you down? They give you 2 minutes to talk during public comment. They never put you on the agenda for any meaningful discourse. They may take you for a tour, which they took me for a tour at one of your clerk's offices here years ago. And I would catch them in all of these different kind of little lies. Like this old curmudgeon clerk, you probably know who I'm talking about, this old guy. And he had like the cane, and he looks like the guy from Up. And I'm like, hey, do you have any internet access for your tabulators? And he's like, no, we don't have that. They're closed systems, and I've heard that. I knew that he was going to say that. And then I asked him, how do you transfer data from the tabulator to the Secretary of State? And normally, they're smart enough to tell you that They retrieve jump sticks from the tabulators to preserve the air gap. And they will electronically send to the Secretary of State through their election management systems computer. And people started asking them, well, do you take ballot images? And he said, no, we don't scan the image of the ballot because it slows down our ability to send the results. So within 2 minutes, he's already lied because you're electronically sending the results. That's not through the retrieval of some jump stick and uploading it to the election management system. And I've heard them lie about they don't even have the ability to export that passport record summary that I showed you. So we've been lied to. So how long have we been lied to by ES&S? Well, back in 2014, it was reported that you had over 14,000 of their voting machines that were affixed with chip modems. The particular model was a DS200, which you all use in Idaho. And then we found out later that the number was actually closer to 30,000. And those machines are still in circulation, by and large, throughout the country. But we're still supposed to trust them. So that's a little bit of Idaho. You might have some other players, but the point is this. I don't care which brand of machine, whether it's Dominion, now Liberty Vote, Harkin or Civic, Unison, they all have the same functional capabilities for subversion. So I look at all this, and I'm sitting there going, okay, I've tried to have people maintain their courage and not certify fraudulent machines and fraudulent processes. And what would happen is your clerks would call up the AG and make referrals for their prosecution. And in places like Washington, who here came over from Washington? You've got laws on the books that they'll make felons out of you if you don't agree with the process. It's like Stalin came over and started writing the code. So one of the things you have to understand is that your legislators aren't writing your election codes. The vendors are. The vendors write your election code. What they do is they wine and dine a politician, get the politician to sponsor the bill, and it gets voted on, and all the politicians love those bills because they ensure their incumbency. Does that make sense? Okay, so this was the fight for me for years. Just say no. Like the drug campaign. Just say no. And we had commissioners that were willing to say no until their lives were ruined. And I still think to some degree we need to have people that are courageous enough just to say no. And, I was talking with Ruth Ryan outside, and she's like, we've got some wonderful young people that could be filling important positions on a canvassing board or local attorneys. And I'm not sure that they're up for saying no. Because they'll be convicted as felons. And I get that. I really do. But you have to understand, when I had my job at the university, I knew what would happen if I said no to the jab for my students. I was going to get fired. That was the outcome. But I said no anyway. And I think the reason why I said no is I remember my father. And I remember my grandfather. And there's something about the quality of men 30 years ago, 50 years ago, that's very different than today. Now, I want you to imagine your own fathers right now, grandfathers. It's like, let's get this straight. You want me to put an experimental drug in a person and we have no studies? Not going to do it. No. Like we all remember there was a time where you could say no and the community would come together. And we didn't know how to do that in 2020 for the most part. It's the old timers. It's you all. Like, you all are beautiful, but the reason why you're here is because you remember there was a time when this country was great. And where are our young people? We sacrificed them on the altar of public education. And where are they at? So the reason why things have shifted and changed in my optimism, and I don't have to give you the same presentation that I did before on nullification and First Amendment participation, showing up and peacefully assembling to petition your government against their tyranny is because Trump somehow got in November 2024. And it's like, Professor Clements, you just showed me that fine-looking systemic election fraud chart. If you're right, how in the world did Trump get in? And that's a great question.
Divine intervention.
It's not divine intervention, but it is. It is. So we're going to explain that as we go along, and I do my little weave on what's going on. What happened? So, as I said before, the title of my speech is Meeting Trump in the Middle. I actually got to meet Trump. Do you know that? I got to have dinner with President Trump. And this was back in August of 2021, where he was out of office. I got invited to Bedminster. And I had just left the cyber symposium. And I flew there on Mike Lindell's plane. I mean, talking about surreal. And I was almost late because Mike stopped for drive-thru at Kentucky Fried Chicken. That's so Mike. It is. But I get there, and I come in, and Trump's sitting at his desk, and he looks up and he goes, "It's you? It's you?" And I'm going, "It's me." And I didn't know what he was talking about. I said, "I just got done watching you for 2 hours on the TV," and he was very, he praised my presentation, which is really great. You don't know if it's just false flattery, but it's great to hear it. Yeah. It's better than the alternative. "You were terrible. You were awful. Oh God. Someone cancel this meeting. Yeah, you're fired." And he went into kind of autopilot and said things that you've heard him say a million times, like, "They're so unfair to me," and all those things. And I think he just was trying to get a sense of who I was. And I got great advice before I met with him, which is, don't try to impress the man. Don't try to act like you know more than him, because you don't. You just don't. And so he tells me how terrible everyone's treating him. And at some point he stops, looks at me, and just says, "Okay, so what do we do?" Now, I want you to think about that if you're in my shoes. The leader of the free world, whether he is in office or not, is asking you for an answer on the most complex, devastating thing that we've ever encountered as a nation. And you have to fight your instincts to not be the pitch man, to make him make him think that you're something that you're not. If you only had me and relying on my advice, we would be fine. And there's a lot of hubris that goes on in these patriot movements, where people really think they've got it. And I looked at him, I said, "Mr. President, I've read the lawsuits filed by your attorneys, and they're good lawsuits. I get them. They're great black letter law. The problem isn't the black letter law. The problem is you. You're the problem." Meaning, whatever it is that you represent as a threat to the deep state, they've thrown the black letter law out the window. So I can file something with 10 months more information at the time. And it'll likely be dismissed twice as fast. Now, this is my chance to shine. Be like, "Here's my charts. I got the Dr. Frank charts. Like, this is what's going on. This is what we do. We do this. We motivate this person this. We go to this courtroom." And I'm sitting there going, I've looked at all of the cases, and I have. I see a cancerous rot with the judiciary that I don't see a way in the court of law. Now, 6 years later, I've been absolutely vindicated on that statement. Absolutely vindicated. You tell me about the wild successes that we've had in courtrooms, where 99% of the cases have been dismissed for standing or lack of standing. But he said something that stuck with me. It was as if to check that premise. "Are you sure?" He said, all the courts. And the way that he asked the question, You know, I'm sitting there going, well, geez, you appointed some of these judges. Maybe you know which courtroom that we should file. Well, let me know. And I think what he was pointing to is there's a whole court system that you guys don't think about at all. See, I'm a former prosecutor in a civil court system. I mean, we have criminal jurisdiction, and we do crimes and RICO and racketeering. I've done racketeering cases. I've taken down drug trafficking organizations that work with the cartels. I know how that works. But here's the problem. There's no racketeering case on earth that can take down entire agencies of our government that are captured, because they have badges and resources and spooks. People get disappeared, they get killed. That's what we're up against. And I've had a RICO case where from indictment to verdict took 7 years. And these were against people that looked like cold-hearted killers with tattoos on their face and everything else. You tell me the caliber of lawyer they're getting compared to a Hillary Clinton or James Comey or John Brennan. What happens when the suspect is the director of the CIA? I'm sorry, guys, if you think a RICO case is suited to take on the leaders of our intelligence agencies, they're not. I've done the cases, mastered the system. When the enemy is from within, and it's not exterior, and you've got wholesale infiltration, what's your plan legally? And the answer is, it's the military. And the military is the only way.
Wait, exactly.
So, there's two things that you have to look towards. Number one, where in history do you find precedence for what I'm talking about? You got to go all the way back to the Civil War. That's 1 point off of your total grade point average. And I've had students come in with sob eyes. I had an A, and you knocked me down to an 89, and now I don't have the same GPA. I'm sorry.
Oh my God.
There is no real test here. I've got no power. So, before I was so kindly interrupted, we were talking about the military and the Civil War and Lincoln. The person of Lincoln. And Lincoln's controversial, especially if you ever lived in the South like I did. Lincoln was a bad name. He was a bad word where I grew up. Because what did he do? He acted unconstitutionally. He suspended the writ of habeas corpus. And guess what? Under Article 2, he doesn't have that power. That's an Article 1 power that's reserved to Congress. And so I'm paraphrasing, but Lincoln was known for saying something along the lines of, why am I driving myself crazy trying to observe the laws when I'm in the midst of lawlessness? I'm in the midst of rebellion and invasion and a confederacy. And you guys want to nickel and dime me on quelling that rebellion? Because that's what the suspension would do. It would allow them to do targeted arrests, and we would deal with your due process rights later. That's the whole point of the suspension, is you've got due process rights, but until we neutralize the threat that is you, we're putting you on ice. And so he started suspending habeas corpus in very targeted ways. And the Supreme Court ruled, and guess what they ruled? It was unconstitutional. You can't do that. Well, Lincoln did it anyway. It was basically, well, let's see you enforce it. Now, at some point, Congress, the Union Congress, voted in favor of suspending the writ of habeas corpus about a year later. But what are we learning from this? Did Lincoln really have the backing of Congress, or was he acting in defiance of Congress? Defiance. And when the Supreme Court says you can't do that, but he does it anyway, do you have a unified government? So fast forward to 2020, 2022, 2024. Sounds a lot like where we're at. Give me cell 7, the last one. This is the Save America Act. Let's scroll up a little bit. Let's talk about how controversial this is. Number one, all voters must show voter ID. Shocking, right? 2, all voters must show proof of citizenship in order to vote. Oh, now he's lost the populist movement with that. Why wouldn't we want illegal invaders to not vote for our representation? Number 3, no mail-in ballots except for illness, military, etc. Number 4, this is where it gets really dicey. No men and women's sports. And number 5, this is what killed it, because everyone's for this. No transgender mutilation surgery for children. Now, if you poll Democrats and Republicans that aren't part of the active U.S. Congress or U.S. Senate, 80% approval, both parties. Everyone agrees on this. Now, in theory, do Republicans control the House? Call it out, yes. Do we control the Senate?
Yes.
Have we gotten a vote on this?
No.
You tell me who the enemy is. John Thune. We don't have the votes. We don't have the votes to do this. We're not splitting atoms. This isn't like complex tax reform. This is like chemical castration. We want to stop that and show your ID. And we can't bring that to a vote. So close that out. Do you think Trump is let down and you're sitting there going, you know something? Gosh, we had a good try, and now we're screwed. Because I can't get John Thune to get these people to work. The X is at the top, right there in the center. Give me still number 2. We're going to figure this out. I'll read this for you. The Democrats refuse to vote, and you can add Republicans, refuse to vote for voter ID or citizenship. The reason is very simple. They want to continue to cheat in elections. This was not what our founders desired. I have searched the depths of legal arguments not yet articulated or vetted on the subject, and will be presenting an irrefutable one in the very near future. There will be voter ID for the midterm elections. This is key. Whether approved by Congress or not. And this includes no mail-in ballots. Okay, that is the language, ladies and gentlemen, of a president that is relying on national security war powers.
Right.
That is not, when you're ready to say, okay, you want to play? I don't need your help. So we have to fast forward to a case called the Youngstown Steel decision, which gives us the definitive opinion on where the president's powers start and stop in the context of war. And in that case, Harry Truman was president at the time. We were bracing ourselves for war with Korea, and he started seizing steel at steel mills, and someone said, can you do that? And the concurrence was written by Justice Jackson, who was a Nuremberg prosecutor. And Justice Jackson laid it out, and I'll try to give you the Cliff Notes version. It's basically this. The president's war powers are at their zenith, height, when he works with Congress. It gets iffy in the twilight area where Congress is silent, and where he is diametrically opposed in defiance of Congress, his powers are at their lowest ebb. Which means right out the gate, you've got a road to hoe. So who here read the recent election integrity executive order issued by Trump? Yeah, it's pretty benign. People were texting me it and going, do you think this is good? And I'm sitting there going, where's the nuclear option here? Where's the part where we hang people? And I'm sitting there going, wow, this is actually brilliant, because he's using existing black letter law from the Help America Vote Act, from NIVRA, the National Voter Registration Act, and many other federal provisions, and it's all about enforcing federal law in a way that requires no buy-in whatsoever from your fickle, unreliable state clerks. What do I mean by that? Basically, he's commandeering the U.S. Postal Service, a federal agency, and says, states, you don't get to use the USPS to mail out your ballots in Idaho or Washington unless your ballots are prepared on our list, our voter roll list. The one that Doge looked at last year and started pulling 200-year-old people off, non-US citizens. And everyone wondered, well, I guess the Elon experiment was a waste of time, because what happened? This is what happened. They were curating the list and saying, this is what you use. DHS screened and approved voter list, also what we've looked at through the Social Security Act, or Social Security Administration, to make sure that we've got the most up-to-date list. This is what you have to use. And if you don't want to use them, you don't have to. You just don't get to use the Postal Service. You got to pay your own way. And you don't get to use federal money. Okay, this is key. Now, in order to use your black boxes, your tabulators, your election equipment, in all 50 states, every single state took half the money. That's the carrot and the stick. You don't want to use federal compliance or federal laws, you don't get to take our money. But if you take our money, you have to adhere to the federal laws. Isn't that brilliant?
Yes.
So some of you are going, well, that sounds great. So what happens when your state officials drag their feet, and they will, and they don't want to use their list, but they want the money? The president can contact the treasurer, Scott Dissent, and say, Mr. Scotty, I need you to press pause. He can cancel the disbursements. And he's been showing you that he has, in fact, been canceling disbursements on things related to Somalia and all the fraud that's going on there, some of the banking fraud that we're seeing over in the Iran conflict on who was funding Khomeini. And Dissent is a savage in the best kind of, he's amazing. He might be my favorite cabinet, which is surprising. But. So he's got enough congressional laws on the books that he's working with that under the War Powers decision, guess what he's doing? He's actually working at the height of his powers. He's not inventing new legislation. He doesn't need Congress to pass new laws. He's just looking at the laws that no one reads. And I've read those laws, and it's great. So no post service for you, no money for you, use our list, and the only ballots that go out better be on our list. That's brilliant, folks. Which may change a lot of elections that are consequential. Now that's not going to get us all the way there, because we still have these rigged machines, as I showed you. That's a national security issue. That's a critical infrastructure issue. So in order for the president to sit back and go, okay, now I'm in territory where I don't have laws on the books, and I'm in active defiance. That means he has to resort to his Article 2 powers, his plenary authority as commander-in-chief, and he's got to be prepared to say, just like Lincoln did, let's see you enforce it. And I'll give you an example that perhaps you can relate to. When I was a law professor, I'd have to do pop quizzes and test people's knowledge about the Constitution. And I'd say, look, let's think of a hypothetical. Let's say that the current sitting Congress is getting upset that they can't do the same amount of money laundering they were doing in Ukraine through FTX and all the different scandals. And president is just not going to war the way that we want him to, because in the years past we could always count on people getting us into forever wars, and somehow, certain congressional members' bank accounts go from, 200 grand to 40 million. And how does that happen? But it happens. And we really need to open up the funding that we had in Ukraine. But President Trump isn't helping Zelensky out. He's not treating him like the new Winston Churchill. And so this is what Congress does. They pass this thing called the Benevolent Help the Children of Ukraine Act. And it's bipartisan. This is key. It's bipartisan. So Democrats and Republicans together, reaching across the aisle and voting together for the Benevolent Treatment of the Kids in Ukraine Act, which allows them, to direct troop movements and make sure that things are taken care of. Because we can't trust Trump. He criticized, Candace Owens and the Pope. We got, he's crazy. So we've got to take matters into our own hands. Y'all follow me so far in the hypothetical? And not only did they get a bipartisan vote, Michael Jackson was raised from the dead and wrote a new song that was a sequel to We Are the World. Remember We Are the World? And it's called We Love Ukraine. So every celebrity that you've seen is now around one microphone, and they're just telling you how much they love Ukraine. So the energy, the pop culture fervor around this is looking good. So Trump sends his lawyers, they file an injunction, and it goes to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, all those mean, dirty looks that Amy Coney Barrett gives Trump. We start figuring out what team she plays for. And she writes the majority opinion and rules that that act is constitutional. Just go with me on the hypothetical. Now, most lawyers are taught that when the Supreme Court says something, it's the final authority and it is the law. Most of you have heard that. So my question to my students, in light of the fact this was bipartisan, it's about the children, maybe. There was a song from Michael Jackson, crying out loud. I thought he was dead. And the Supreme Court just said it's absolutely constitutional. What can Trump do? Does Trump have to go along with it? Absolutely not. He's the commander-in-chief. His plenary authority under Article 2 requires that he maintain his oath of office, the take care clause, etc. He has to say no. So where has he talked about Article 2? Let's look at cell 6.
Article 2, where I have the right to do whatever I want as president, but I don't even talk about that.
It's a thing called Article 2. Nobody ever mentions Article 2.
More importantly, Article 2 allows me to do whatever I want. Article 2 would have allowed me to fire him. But I wasn't going to fire. You know why? Because I watched Richard Nixon go around firing everybody, and that didn't work out too well. So, very simply, Article 2 would allow me to do. I could have done anything I wanted. I don't even bring it up, because we don't even get there. Absolutely, I have Article 2.
It gives me all of these rights at a level that nobody has ever seen before. We don't even talk about Article 2.
Someone's been trying to tell you his plan all along.
Yeah.
All along. And he's been telling you that this issue with mail-in ballots is a national security issue. So, which goes along the lines with what I've been sharing with you about the War Powers decision and Justice Jackson's concurrence. Give me cell number 1.
Voter ID is part of Homeland Security. Think of it. We're talking about two separate items, but they're really the same. Voter ID is part of Homeland Security. And citizenship, proof of citizenship, is part of Homeland Security.
Okay, so he is framing the debate on the things that are afflicting Idaho and Washington with the prevalence of mail-in ballots, no voter ID, as national security issues, where he can go back to cell number 2. Scroll down. Fight with Congress, whether approved by Congress or not. So when I tell you this, I'm not just speculating. I'm a trained lawyer, I'm a trained prosecutor. If you know how to read the tea leaves, you see that there's a method to his madness. Now, let's get back to the million-dollar question. How in the world did he win in 2024? Let's answer that. And this is where I'm going to really challenge you. But you need to see if you can stay with me. Joe Rogan, you know who Joe Rogan is? had Elon Musk on his podcast. And, you know, he's spoken with Elon many, many times. He was at the Trump watch party at Mar-a-Lago on election night. And he said something that really was very curious to me. Is before the close of the polls, Elon, according to Joe Rogan, pulled out his phone and said, he always looks to the left before he talks. He goes, like he's doing a math problem. Trump won. Okay, allegedly this was before the close of polls. This was earlier on, when we were all up till 10 o'clock at night waiting for the returns. Hours before that, Elon looked at his phone, was looking at some type of app or tech or data, and said Trump won. Now, if I did that, you'd say, we already knew that you're crazy, but you're really crazy. But when Elon does it, you kind of have to sit there and go, what do you mean? Because we're talking about the guy that is responsible for SpaceX. And during Trump's first term, he helped deploy thousands of satellites. You guys remember this thing called Space Force?
Yes.
And for Elon to do that, he would actually have to have the highest national security clearances on Earth because there would be military-civilian interfacing to do this. And if you understand how data travels, satellite dominance is key. So when Trump appears to be 10 steps ahead of everyone, it's because he restructured the military to make sure that Space Force was in a place of preeminence. And all of your shadow agencies are inferior to the NSA. So you can have a weaponized DOJ, you can have a weaponized FBI. Chances are, if there was a FISA warrant or some type of military commission, they could monitor everything of everyone. Unless you think I'm making things up, in 2021, Adam Schiff reported, oh, by the way, there's a grand jury that was investigating me and surveilling me since the beginning of Trump's first term. Ooh, now that changes things. So when Trump says we have it all, you have to ask yourself, how can he possibly have it all? Well, I would submit to you, satellite dominant Space Force allows you to create the perfect scenario for a sting operation. Because, you know, it's the only way I can make sense of how we won, knowing what I know about the architecture. So there are two things I'll submit to you that were different about November 2024 compared to November of 2020. Number one, everyone remember in November of 2020, the giant F curve.
Yes.
In the swing states, Trump is winning by tens, 50,000, hundreds of thousands of votes. And then all of a sudden, everyone's told to stop counting, go home. We look at the election night reporting, and we see a reboot and a new batch of votes that were digitally inserted. Remember that. Did you see that in November 2024 with respect to Trump in the swing states? No, you did not. So when Elon's looking at his phone and saying Trump won, it might have just been common sense dictated by the idea if there was a legitimate cyber intervention to stop a digital injection of reports that you see on TV, that's a new development. So one of the things that people get confused about is that the data that you see in that cast vote record, those are supposedly votes that were being submitted through your black box tabulator. Election night reporting is not the same data. And this is key. We see the same algorithmic controls in election night reporting, and it's astonishing. But basically what we're seeing is perception engineering. So the way that your vote's processed, at some point after you send in your mail-in ballot or vote in person, and it's run through the machines, you have two outputs where you get to see votes tabulated and reported. One is either on a website, like your Secretary of State website, and you're all clicking the button, refreshing it to see if your guy's going to win or lose. You all follow me? The other place is on TV, where you've got the tracker at the bottom that updates the totals. And the entities that are known for exporting this information are Seidel and Edison. Edison's TV, Seidel is basically an underlying data aggregator that puts things up on websites. But it's the same data. We've confirmed it's the same data. Now, when we looked at the data, election night reporting data comes in batches just like the tabulators. And so we get a block of 100 votes. And again, we're looking at the cumulative ratio between Biden and Trump. And the first batch comes in and it's 50-50. Okay, could be. Next batch comes in, it's 50-50. Okay. Next batch comes in, it's 50-50. Now stop me if you've heard this one. The next batch comes in, and it's 50-50. How long do you guys want me to do this? For 55 batch sets in a row, the ratio between Trump and Biden was 50-50. Does that model real-life behavior?
No.
Absolutely not. And then at some point, if you're dealing with a PID controller, a predictive control model, and I'll tell you what that is, we started seeing batch set after batch set that gave Biden, let's say, 50.1%. I'm kind of making up the number, I can't remember. And Trump got 49.9%. Now you do that cumulatively for a batch that comes in. You now have tweaked and given Biden just a slight advantage. So the next batch set comes in, it's the same thing. 51.1, 49.9. Next batch set comes in. Next batch set comes in. 96 batch sets in a row with that control. Now, I'm not making this data. This was the actual data that we confirmed from the state of Georgia, one of the swing states. So what we're seeing in that distribution of data is evidence of a PID controller. It's a proportional integrative derivative function. It's a closed feedback system. And you all use it every day, whether you're aware of it or not. Did you know that you use a PID function every day? Your thermostat, your air conditioning, and your cruise control. So if you want to drive someplace, you set on your cruise control, and let's say that you want to go 55 miles per hour. As long as you're on flat, even terrain, you're coasting. But what happens when you go up the hill? Are you still going 55? Gravity kicks in, and your speed decreases. But the PID controller kicks in, deploys the gas, just enough to bring you back to the set point, which is 55 miles per hour. Everyone follow me? So then you crest the hill, and you're going downhill, or are you going 55? No, now your speedometer is faster. So the PID controller kicks in, there's a deployment of the brake, and it slows you down until you get back to the set point. That's the same phenomenon that we're seeing in the Castle Record Summary, Election Night Reporting, but they're two very different data streams. Now, my critics will say, well, Dave, no one's saying that the Election Night reporting is like concrete data. It's based on a model that includes projection. And this is the way that they try to give themselves plausible deniability. No, there's some projection going on. Okay, well, what's the projection model? Tell me about it. Because my idea is this, is when someone takes the data from a hardened system, a closed system, and a tabulator, and they upload it, what would you expect to see? The accumulation or addition of votes. Would you expect to see deletion? Or oscillation? Would you expect to see your data do this? It would be this, 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 this. When we looked at the live data, we were seeing fluctuation. Always. All right. Now, the way that they'll try to explain that away is like, no, you don't understand. We have exit pollsters outside. And based on a formula, we get exit polls that we aggregate that into the data. So I'm going to do this poll. I do it everywhere I go, and I probably poll 100,000 people at this point. I may be exaggerating, but only that little. How many here have been stopped after you voted and participated in an exit poll in your entire life? Show of hands. Now, let's say that you've got a polling company that's big. Maybe it's got 200 employees. Could you deploy those employees to 3,000 plus counties? How are you getting detailed votes down to the precinct level? Do you think you have an exit pollster in some rural county? So how in the world are we seeing the same phenomena of fluctuation? So what I'm telling you is what Elon was reporting, if I put together the architecture, the ability to gaslight you into thinking that someone's winning based on their fraudulent fake data that you see on the screen, he was able to stop it. Or someone that was able to stop it. That was interdiction number one. Interdiction number two, it was widely reported, because this is what we saw in 2020, white vans showing up with mail-in ballots after the closed polls. Fulton County, Detroit, Wayne County. We had reports in 2024 of interdiction efforts that stopped ballots from showing up at places like Pennsylvania, and they weren't counted. So Trump was able to do at least two things in 2024 that were not done in 2020. He could stop the cheat from a standpoint of perception engineering on what you saw on the screen. Because look, whether you like it or not, when Fox News calls a race, it's over. People start conceding that night. You certify an election 2 weeks later, how many people actually hold out for 2 weeks and fight? Most of them say, okay, best man won. And they concede. Did Trump ever concede? No, we didn't. Is this interesting to you all, or am I putting you to sleep? Is this okay? Now, what Trump did was masterful because he didn't fix the problem everywhere. We just didn't see this happen in swing states concerning his race. But where did we see it? Did we see it with Kerry Lake? Oh, yeah. Did we see it with Sam Brown in Nevada? Oh, yeah. There are at least 8 U.S. Senate races that were firmly in the R column on Election Day, and weeks afterwards, ballots started showing up. And all of a sudden, all of those returns started favoring Democrats. There are 20 House races in California alone that were firmly in the hands of Republicans. And you know how long they counted mail-in ballots after Election Day? 2 months. 2 months. And eventually they had enough. And the selected candidates won. So it's beautiful because at the same time people say, well, Trump won. Stop complaining. Are you going to stop complaining, Professor, now that Trump won? I'm like, no, because it's still there. But it still doesn't answer the basic question of, okay, Professor Clements, you pointed out 2 obvious things. We didn't see the white vans dumping ballots in Pennsylvania. We didn't see the F curve in Trump's races in 2024. But he wasn't president. So how in the world would he have the authority to have someone come in for the good guys and stop it from happening? He'd have to be like the commander-in-chief. And so I have to ask you a question. Can you be the commander-in-chief and not the president?
Yes. Yes.
I would submit to you that you can.
Yes.
Under certain circumstances. Now, some of you that are like, Dave, this is where I'm getting nervous. Would you play cell number 4 for me?
45, 46, and 47, if you think about it. I just don't want the credit for 46.
They indict their political opponent, and what that does is it sets off a chain of events that's very dangerous in future years. It could happen to them very easily. The reason Crooked Joe and his thugs are trying so hard to stop me is that in my first term I disrupted all of it. Oh, did I disrupt? That was called major disruption. And in my second term, which we're sort of having now, but I don't want the results, right?
Okay, leave that up, because I like admiring this beautiful man. When he said what he just said right there, this was actually during the campaign when Biden was president. What do you mean we're in our second term? I just don't want the results. The first video, he's actually talking to military generals at Quantico. And he flat out said, I'm the 45th, 46th, and 47th. Okay, so people are like, okay, maybe the 25th Amendment is what's necessary, if I'm wrong. But folks, what you cannot do is walk past statements like that. Do you know the implications? Do you have any other data points? Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and give you a big one. Close that out. You guys remember Butler?
Yes.
Give me that map right there. Now, he showed this chart, and it makes really no sense. I've looked at this chart. And he'd show it rally after rally after rally. In fact, while he was getting shot at, what chart was he pointing to? The one that he says saved his life. Well, he said that this chart saved his life before Butler. What do you mean? And I look at the chart in the bottom right-hand corner on April 1st, 2020. It says Trump leaves office. Now, if you think that's a typo or a mistake, I have confirmed that this chart wasn't shown at just one rally, and an intern wasn't fired because they made a typo. This has been at every one of his rallies, and it says Trump leaves office. Now, some of you are going, oh, well, let's see if we can find a fair interpretation of what exactly that means, Trump leaves office, because I, like you, saw him serve out the rest of the term in 2020. I saw him leave. I saw the puppet get installed, named Biden. So what do you mean he left office? Well, during the RNC event in 2024, which happened about a week or so after the Butler assassination attempt, after he praises God, he's got the bandage on his ear, he brings the same exact chart up and puts it on at least 12 giant big screen monitors. And I'm in there. I'm at the RNC at this point. I'm in those ones. And it has this same red arrow that says Trump leaves office. And he actually says something. Oh, by the way, I left office that week. Check the recording. Find the RNC acceptance speech by Trump, and you can hear him say, I left office. So, like, again, what are you talking about? So, there's this thing called continuity of government. And it can be triggered in events where your government has been captured, devastated, eliminated. It was a Cold War doctrine that really contemplated a nuclear event where, let's say that the Russians or the Soviets nuke Washington, D.C., and you've effectively lost huge swaths of your government. What happens? There's a restructuring that takes place. And basically the president reverts, if he's alive, into commander-in-chief mode, and he's working with the military. You can look it up. It's called Directive 40. And the things that trigger Directive 40 are huge events like a bomb dropping in D.C. or things like a bioweapon. So in 2020, did we have a bioweapon? Yes. And according to Dr. Peter McCullough's projections, we have at least 17 million people, 3 times the number of the Holocaust, that were murdered by this bioweapon, that also had U.S. involvement, because you had, I think it's Peter Daszak, who was dealing with gain-of-function experimentation, confirmation that, yes, it did come from Wuhan, China. So under Directive 40, you have the legal predicate to initiate a continuity of government framework, because we're under attack. Now remember what President Trump told you. We need to open up the country by Easter. Remember that? We have to open up the country by Easter. So keep in mind, this is around April 1st, 2020. Did any state government comply with the orders of a wartime president? No. None did. And what did he start using his Twitter account for? Right out the gate, he starts telling you the Democrats are going to rig the election using mail-in ballots. How did he know that? And there's at least 6 or 7 posts where he is like Nostradamus, telling you exactly how things are going to go down to rig the election, as if he knew it was going to happen. And so now you've got a sting operation. Okay, so if this is fanciful for you, you explain Joe Biden to me. No, let's talk about this. I've got all of this brain power, and I'm trying to cover Lincoln, and I'm looking at the laws, and I'm getting you actual sources so you can check and look at these cases. I'm making it up. I have done nothing in the red pill department that compares to who Joe Biden is. So, some anecdotes to consider. Under continuity of government, the commander-in-chief would basically retain power and control over hardened national critical infrastructure, like the military. For the first time in recent memory, was Biden able to deploy the hardened military anywhere during a 4-year term? After 20 years in Afghanistan, that might give you pause. What did he do with the hardened military in Afghanistan? Nothing. He botched it. Where's his power? All of the power in the Biden regime was through money laundering through Ukraine. So are we connecting dots here? So, I don't know how far this goes. I'm not telling you that, everything is crazy, but I'm telling you, you can't walk past the president telling you that he left office when he did. You can't walk past the president at Quantico in front of the military saying he was the 45th, 46th, 47th president. You can't walk past that, folks. And it accounts for so much if he's working with a wartime framework. Go ahead and close that out. I think we hit all of those boxes. So here's where I want to take this. When I met Trump, I had just went through hell because here I am, this prestigious professor, and a week after I met with Trump, I'm terminated from my dream job. I'm canceled. I get 6 investigations to strip me of my license. Not 1, not 2, not 3, 6. I have been fighting for a license I can't use for 6 years. Google my name. There's over 1,000 articles that have sought to destroy me. So when I go out and try to have an impact in my community, I have coffee and people come up to me and they look like they want to spit on me. I've got my son coming into my house and he looks depressed and I go, "Hey, you okay?" And he doesn't want to tell me that the kid that he was playing with, his mom Googled me and forbade him from playing with my son because of who I am. That's my life. So if tonight's or today's presentation might have a twinge of hopium, I have earned my hopium. This is not me coming here telling you that the president is going to save you. This is coming from a guy who has scanned tens of thousands of ballots in actual audits. This is coming from a guy that defended Jeff Lindbergh, one of our nation-state experts, in the Curling v. Raffensperger deposition against 20 other attorneys. One of the law firms is Morrison Forster, which has 4 offices in communist China. You tell me if you've ever been in a deposition with 20 other attorneys on the other side and it's just you and your client. So I've done that. I filed lawsuits. I fought and fought and fought and fought. So am I crazy? Am I on autopilot? Am I watching a movie? Am I eating popcorn? God, no. Because I've seen great people be destroyed in this movement. Tina Peters being one of them. It's real what she's going through.
Where does that stand?
We'll get to that in a little bit. But I'm cooking. My dear friend Joel, who infiltrated a call with Antifa, who heard Eric Coomer say out loud, "Don't worry about the election. I made effing sure that Trump's going to lose." Fined $1,000 a day because he won't give up his source, because if he gives up his source, they'll murder him. So this is the world that I live in. Death threats, potential disbarment. So when I come here and I give you this stuff, and it may be fantastical, it may be the greatest, theorizing or postulating of a possibility, I wouldn't give this to you if I didn't think it was right, or there's some version of this that's right. So back to my meeting, I'm at Bedminster. Trump turns to me, "What do we do?" So I've just shared a lot with you. We're going back to this meeting. What do we do? Are you sure? Are you sure all the judges are bad? Under Article 2, you don't use Pam Bondi. Under Article 2, you don't use Todd Blanche. So we're all looking at the fecklessness of nothing happening, no arrest. I get it. You see how masterful this is art of war. Everyone's distracted looking at jurisdiction and courtrooms that aren't suited for this. Article 2, military commissions, is how you take on captured intelligence agencies. Not a RICO case. Perhaps some will be tried in the civil court system. Do I have talking points or anecdotes for that? Yes, I do. 600 JAG officers were sworn in throughout the nation under the auspices of doing immigration law. Okay.
Gitmo was expanded.
I've done immigration law. As a prosecutor that dealt with the cartel, a lot of the people that come over and murder our people aren't U.S. citizens. There's about 3 cases you have to master in order to get through an immigration proceeding. You don't get people that are trained in courts martial to lighten up your docket on work that, frankly, a monkey can do. 20 JAGs were sworn in D.C. to help with misdemeanor, vagrancy, trespass cases. Ginny and Piro were overworked. We need JAG officers, we need military officers to help us. Do you know how you cut your teeth as an attorney right out of law school? They give you misdemeanor, vagrancy, trespass cases, because you can screw them up and it's not the end of the world. Public defenders, you name it. That's not what's happening here. What else do I have? Well, back to the War Powers case of Youngstown. In order for Lincoln to be vindicated in suspending the writ of habeas corpus, he had to be fighting against active rebellion and invasion. Those were the legal predicates for him to withstand scrutiny from a historical standpoint. He was fighting against Confederates with muskets shooting at our country. Have we not had an invasion in our country? So let's connect some dots. At the border, how many invaded our country? Rough estimate. 10 to 20 to 40 million illegal invaders came over and were flown to strategic places on Spirit Airlines and everything else. Now, think about this. That's called a digital. It's not just, there's a physical invasion, but there's also a digital invasion, which might have been lost on some. The digital invasion is this. Many of the people that cross over want to work. So where do they go? Because you have to at least get an identification card at a bare minimum to get employment for any HR office, even the ones that will look the other way for illegals. You got to have at least some paperwork for your accounting. So what happens when you go into a DMV in America and do any business? You're automatically added to the voter rolls. Under the Voter Act, signed by Bill Clinton in the early 90s. And at one point, it was illegal to determine the citizenship of those that came in and conducted DMV business. So now you've got a credit line of 10 to 20 to 40 million people that are illegal invaders. rebellion, invasion, legal predicates. Now what happens is that a voter ID number is assigned to those that are on the voter rolls. And when you want to talk about how we're losing our elections, bad actors are generating ballots that are tied to a voter ID number by tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. And I'm here to tell you, illegals aren't voting in your elections. I defy you to find some guy that can't speak English just risking going into an election office, going through the process. Have you actually seen it? But that doesn't mean their ballot isn't being voted for them. Okay, am I making this up? John Solomon just reported, folks, about what happened with a spot visit with a congressional delegation the day after the November 2024 election. And I got to meet with a high-level person that was part of that delegation about 4 days after the election. I got to see the video evidence that substantiated the affidavit that Solomon reported on about showing up, and the industrial-sized ballot printing machines were still on, printing ballots after the election. They're being placed on pallets by tens of thousands, loaded onto Penske trucks by non-English speakers. The CEO of Runbeck was trying to tell everyone to put their cameras away. I got to see that. It's very exciting. So now you've got seditious conspiracy, treason, invasion, rebellion. You have everything that Trump needs to target wherever he needs to go. Suspend writ of habeas corpus if he needs to. I'm not even sure that he needs to. Because if he's triggered continuity of government, he has legally checked off all the boxes, step by step. Some of you should be asking yourself, David, can he have troops policing civilians? Well, yes and no. The answer is no, unless. Because we have this thing called the Posse Comitatus Act, which prohibits anyone using the military to police civilians. And we saw National Guard where? Minneapolis, Portland, California. It wasn't just federal installations, folks. They were out there. You saw what happened in Minneapolis. Was the street in which Renee Good was shot, was that an ICE facility? No. So it's illegal unless what? The Insurrection Act has been initiated, would be one answer. I'm not sure you need to trigger the Insurrection Act if you've activated continuity of government, number one. Number two, on Trump's first day of office, he started signing all of the executive orders, hundreds of executive orders, right? One of the executive orders was to combat the invasion. And if you actually look at what's in that executive order, it perfectly satisfies the legal requirements of the Insurrection Act, which means he's done nothing illegal with the deployment of the military to police civilians. Want some more? Well, this was challenged in court, and the Supreme Court appeared to slap Trump on the hand, saying, you can't use the National Guard. They said, you've got to follow the ordinary course of things. And everyone thought that that was a verdict against Trump. But if you actually read the decision, the ordinary course means you use the Marines before you go to the National Guard. And Trump, what did he do? He put out a truth post. He says, I'm going to take out the National Guard in, Portland and California. But when crime returns, not if, when, we're going to be back better than ever. Well, I get the sense that you send the Marines, it's going to be a lot better for a lot of people. Tariffs, he was ahead of the game. Folks, he's the master of the rope-a-dope.
Yeah.
And so everything that you, if you guys want to, my job isn't to give you tinfoil hats today. My job as a law professor is to say, is it legally possible for him to do what he's doing? And is there a historical predicate for what we're seeing? Tribunals. Let's end on this because I love tribunals. Dave, do you have any examples of tribunals? Well, go back to Lincoln. There was this thing called the Dakota War, and you had enemy belligerents. And a single tribunal in 37 days tried 397 individuals. One tribunal in 37 days, 397 or 96 convictions. Now, we got more than 395 or 96 bad people in the swamp. Can we scale that? You go to a courthouse in your capital of Idaho, you probably have 20 or 30 or 40 active courts every day. You can easily try 15,000 enemy belligerents through a commission. And the reason why that's preferable is that the due process rights of the accused are not held in a premium. They'll tell you that it is, but like as a prosecutor, prosecuting a case in my world is tough. You have all kinds of rights. As the defendant, you're entitled to everything, all discovery. In a commission, you don't get anything that's classified or presents a national security threat. And this is all national security. You can try 6 people at a time and go out for lunch and you're done. And you don't need a unanimous verdict. In my system, everyone had to agree. With commissions, you have a panel and you just need a majority vote. That, my friends, is shooting fish in a barrel. That's how you take on Obama. That's how you take on Comey. So, I end with this. You wonder why I'm optimistic yet tired? I think we're on the cusp of an ending that I didn't believe was possible. And if I'm wrong, come November, invite me back and throw vegetables at me. But if I'm right, maybe buy me a beer, and we can celebrate. So last thing, I was still in the office, and I said, Mr. President, as you sit there, you're the most powerful man in the country. Whether or not someone stole an election, by virtue of my legal vote, our legal votes, you're the commander-in-chief. But you have to help me. I've lost everything. You can't tell me that Mike Lindell, my dear friend, who I just rode on a plane and was almost late because he had to go to Kentucky Fried Chicken. Don't tell me that Mike Lindell has something that's cyber that you don't have, the guy that created the Space Force. Now, do you think I got an answer? No. I'm not ready. He just looked at me. And so I said, Mr. President, I trust. I'm going to trust in something. You see, I told you, if there's a courtroom to file a lawsuit in, I don't know where it is. Talk about a pitch for employment. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to go out in the court of public opinion, and I'm going to awaken as many hearts and minds as I can. And I'm going to trust that when the timing is right, you're going to meet we the people in the middle. I think he's about to meet us in the middle, folks.
Absolutely.
And even though, because I caught the end of Doc Frank's video where I'm here to give you back your country, right? The 2 foundational promises of Trump was, we caught them all, and I'm giving you back your country. We have them caught, but we haven't seen hangings, we haven't seen shootings, we haven't seen firing squads, so we haven't seen the accountability to feel good about that yet. And I don't feel like he's handed me anything yet from an election standpoint. Let's be honest. In 2020, if he would have secured the machines, seized them all under legitimate legal authority, were you ready to take the baton from him and run an election?
No.
Absolutely not. Are you ready now?
Yes.
I think we are. So the biggest enemy that he faced from day one wasn't whether he could take something, prosecute this person. It was our brainwashing that we were succumbed to for generations. And he needed 4 years of nothing but pain to wake you up. And now, as I stand here wrapping up this speech, you distrust Big Pharma more than ever. You're smarter than your doctors. You distrust the election machines. You know more than your clerks do. You know more than big tech, big media. You are awake and you're ready to go the distance like our founders were. But what's going to make it all go? It's not Trump. It's not us. It's the divine plan that God has set forth, and He's given us the conditions for restoration. 2 Chronicles 7:14. National repentance. And on May 17th, which marks the anniversary of May 17th, 1776, where our revolutionary leaders did the same call. They confessed their national sins, and a country was born. I submit to you that when we fulfill these covenant conditions in our own country, you're going to see the change when that happens. Now, it's a day of prayer. I don't know if it's going to be full-blown confession, but I'll tell you this. In order for confession or repentance to work, you have to know what you're confessing. And I think Epstein's going to help us with that. Full disclosure, and John Solomon said what? Operation Hypersonic Clarity is at hand. The largest and biggest declassification of everything gross, everything disgusting. We're going to be flooded with information where, Lord willing, we will run, fly, jump, skip to the National Mall and be there for a rededication of this country to God Almighty for the rebirth of a nation. And with that, I am done. Thank you for having me. God bless you. That was a bit of a week. That's the way my mind works. That's why I don't have PowerPoints, because I can't go in order. Do we want to entertain questions, or
I think so. We have a few minutes. I think we can do that. So, yeah, Rogan mic.
Okay. Any questions? And guys, let me just say this. Make sure these are questions. If it's a monologue, if you tell me what you think and seeing what I think about it, don't do that to me, please.
David, a good lay primer on Article 2, a good lay primer for non-attorneys.
Okay, primer for Article 2. Guys, we have entered the age of AI with Grok and GTP. These tools, if you're willing to pay like $10 for them, are revolutionary. But the case that I cited on Article 2 with respect to war powers is the Youngstown Steel decision, Justice Jackson's concurrence.
Youngstown, thank you.
Okay.
Hello. Nikki Bukele, president of El Salvador, said in a post, you have to impeach the judges. Is it likely, because you say the courts are so bad, that we can get rid of the judges?
Yes, so Trump put out a truth post about those that are cheating and interfering in our elections will be prosecuted. This includes the lawyers and the judges. So if he's a man of his word, yes. If he's a liar and a scoundrel and worthy of the 25th Amendment, we're all in trouble. But I don't think he is. Hey, Teresa.
Thank you, David. So if I understood your presentation, the cast vote records are useless because they are corrupt. Well, they're good for evidence. You could prove corruption, but they're useless in acting as an accounting, an auditable tool.
No, they're absolutely vital. What you'll find is that cast vote records are now being altered and scrambled in ways that lessens their utility. But look, it's always useful to tell the truth and point to tools that give us the truth. Does that lead to legal outcome that's helped us in any discernible way? That issue is a corruption issue. It's not a cast vote record. But to the degree when I come to places like Idaho, and I used to do technical analysis of nothing but how elections are terrible, some smart ass will sit up front going, well, that thing that you showed us, is that happening in Idaho? Or is that happening in Washington? And I have to honestly tell you, if I haven't seen a cast vote record, I don't know. But my response is this: you don't know either. Give me this cast vote record summary, and we'll find out.
We can't get them in Montana because they claim that because of the special districts, they can
shrink our numbers down to 1 or 2 people in a special district, and therefore we could actually identify who's voting for who.
Yeah, so that came up in our audit in Otero County, and we just said, fine. Tell you what, any place that's got such a small number of voters, we'll redact it, but for purposes of a statistical analysis, like, look, we can go to any place that we've got more than 5 people in a precinct, it's a moot issue. So go ahead and keep your areas where we could actually determine who that person is, and we'll go to 99.9% of all the other places where that's not a problem. And then they didn't have an answer for that, so.
Hey, Professor, thanks for being here. Hey, I've seen your movie, Let My People Go, and it pisses me off every time I watch it. But I just cannot fathom how the government got away with just putting people away like that without a trial. Can you give us an update on those folks? Are they still interred?
Okay, so the good news is that on day 1 of Trump's swearing in 2025, mind you, did Trump put his hand on the Bible? No. Okay, does that make him the Antichrist?
No.
Or does it perhaps explain that you have an oath that conflicts with continuity of government?
That's right.
Just another little data point. So this is what happened. The vast majority were released. There are about 4 or 5 that stayed in, but they had underlying state charges that weren't pardonable. And then you had about 14 that didn't get pardons, but they had commuted sentences, and which affected our veterans. Well, you'll notice within the past 48 hours, 72 hours, the Department of Justice entered into an agreement with our J6ers that had their sentences commuted. And they filed a motion for the judge's signature to dismiss and vacate all of their charges. Now that's huge. If the judge signs off, that means that Stuart Rhodes, a military veteran, can get disability, can get his pension, all those things back. Jamie Raskin and everyone's scrambling to make that not happen. They're filing amicus briefs as friends of the court. But if that happens, what would stop a motion to do that for every J6er? Think about that. Now you don't have any convicted felons that were pardoned by an agreement from the Department of Justice and a judge. You can't have just people that were wrong and not have that on the record. So we'll see how that unfolds, but right now we got a surprise victory. That's huge that the Department of Justice said, Judge, we agree with them. Let's not pardon them. Let's treat them as if they were never convicted in the first place.
Could you give an update on Tina Peters, just so that people would know?
Yeah, so Tina, her condition is more or less the same. There have been arguments that were recently heard in which the Court of Appeals vacated her sentence, but they didn't vacate the charges. So here's the bad news. It goes back to the same tyrant sentencing judge that sentenced her to 9 years. I would be shocked if he gave her time served, which would be the right thing to do. Actually, it wouldn't be the right thing to do. The right thing to do would be to line him up and shoot him. But if we don't get that, that's something you can do. Now, here's the good news. You can still write this thing called a writ of certiorari, appeal the areas where they were ruled against on vacating the charges altogether, having a remand for a new trial. That's what they really want to do. If you get to a place where you vacate the charges, she's released. So right now, they're dragging their feet. There should have been an expedited motion for immediate resentencing, so she's not in there. We haven't gotten a date yet. So they might take the time. They want her to die in that person. Jared Polis has talked about, commuting a sentence, but we got a problem there. So my take on Tina is what I shared with Teresa. It might not be satisfactory to you all, but I think God wants her there. And hear me out. You've read your Bibles, familiar with the story of Joseph. He was thrown in the pit. But where did he end up? In the palace. And it was the suffering that qualified him to have this great testimony. I think the suffering that Tina is going under is going to present a proving ground for her to be an icon in civil rights going forward. So if God is being tough enough on Tina to put her there. You got to trust that he's going to sustain her. And when you talk to her on the phone, visit her, her faith is remarkable. She's had people attack her. She gets death threats. All I can tell you is that Trent Evans, Peter Tickton, and the attorneys have followed every form of challenge to have bond reconsidered, get her out. One of the best arguments that I've heard is if you have her declared as a federal whistleblower, you can move her from the facility, but the idea is like, well, what does that do for us if she's still in a federal penitentiary to protect her? I've seen cases where you can be placed under house arrest, still accrue confinement credit. And wouldn't it be great if we just put her like in the nicest house there is while she's got access to people? But that's the latest update from Tina. Any other questions?
I have a question. Doug Logan from Florida did the audit in Arizona. Doug Logan in Arizona did the audit from Florida for the, I think it was something Ninja. group.
Cyber Ninjas, Maricopa
Cyber
County.
Ninjas,
Yeah.
yeah. Have you heard any more about, is he going to get any restitution or any, I don't know, whatever would help him?
Okay. I have to try to be diplomatic. Look, I'm a prosecutor at heart, and I think the audit that my wife and I, with our team, did was the only one that went from start to finish and got a vote to get rid of the machines, vote to get rid of the drop boxes, and a vote to sue the Secretary of State. We did that from the beginning to the end, and because we wouldn't let people infiltrate our team. And so the cost of our audit in New Mexico was the cost of the air conditioning bill for the Coliseum for one day. So what did we see? We saw a spectacle. We saw ballots moving from locations, which destroys chain of custody. There were so many problems with that audit. And it's not to say there weren't great auditors and good people involved, but we're talking about a nation state coup. And so intelligence, agents that are crooked start deploying bad actors to subvert the processes. And so what did we get at the end of that audit, which gives, again, great information? They did a recount, and they said the numbers matched. Well, if you saw my film, they broke the seals on almost all the boxes, and most of the paper was counterfeit. So who cares if you've got the same number of ballots after a recount of counterfeit ballots? Do I think that Doug Logan will, be rehabbed? How much of it, is his fault? I don't know. All I can tell you is that I saw the original draft of their report, and it called for decertification. And it used words like fraud in the report. A day later, all of it was scrubbed. And I challenged him on that. I challenged Doug on it. And so I don't know what, I thought that he basically saved himself. And it's understandable. But the people that are in this movement, were hoping that the Maricopa audit would be the domino that fell, and then we would have had justice, but it didn't work out that way. But look, the stuff that I shared with you tonight, look, there might be a happy ending for everyone, I hope. And I hope that includes Doug.
Thank you for what you do.
You're welcome. Any other questions? We got one over there. Here we go.
Hi, I have a question about the money. So Act Blue, I know Trump has tried to interdict with the money coming from Venezuela. Will he be able to cut off the foreign money coming to U.S. elections?
If what Scott Bessent is doing right now is any effort of whether he can do it, I'd say yes. My hypothesis of late is, okay, why doesn't he just do everything we want on the election? And that's a great question. But you got to consider this. The stuff that's going on in Iran is so relevant to our elections. The Iranian foreign minister flew to Caracas and watched the overthrow of our government with Maduro in 2020. And who was extracted from Venezuela by Delta Force? Maduro. Who was this toppled? Iran. Now, Iran, in my humble opinion, is not a real country. I'm not being facetious. They are a proxy for the banking elite, Lloyds of London, City of London, and they dictate certain pressures on the world. So this is what they do. Whenever a country wants to step up and assert nationalism and get away from a new world order framework or globalist framework, they start lifting their insurance coverage of the ships in the Strait of Hormuz. The prices go up on your grocery shelves, gas pump, and everyone freaks out and they point the finger at whoever's in charge, which would be Trump. So every president, even if they were well-intentioned, were brought to heel by the simple act of the City of London lifting insurance and ships don't move. And he said, enough of this. So what did he do? He said, how in the world are you insuring ships? He used the US Navy. He said, we'll insure them. And then they found out that there's a paper trail with respect to financing from the Bank of England to Khomeini.
Yep.
So Ken Starmer and these guys are in big trouble. So there's been speculation that an executive order could be coming out of Scott Bessent's office to cancel and freeze accounts from foreign agents that have banking interest in the United States. You would stop the flow of money everywhere. Now you can fight elections because they can't re-up with resources. Everything's frozen. So when we would do drug cases with drug trafficking organizations, we would always seize their funds through the RICO proceedings. So this looks like text seizing funds everywhere. And then all of a sudden, whether they want to fight you or not, they just can't fund it. It's like their protest. They clock in, they leave at 2 o'clock p.m. They don't stick around because they're not really vested in what they're protesting. So all I can say is I've seen just enough from Scott Bessent on seizing money that was going to Somalia from all of the billions of dollars of fraud. It looks like he's doing the same thing in Iran. And if you're willing to take on the banking elite, we're talking about the Rothschilds. If you're willing to do that, I wouldn't be too worried about him ruffling feathers on elections. That's just my opinion.
Executive Order 83818 already did that, freezing assets. 13818.
So there's an executive order.
Been doing that for years.
Okay, great.
Since December 20th of 2017, he's been seizing assets.
And was that renewed during Biden?
Yes, it's still there.
Okay, that's another data point for
I
continuity
thought
of
you
government.
were going to talk about it.
Well,
You were right there.
I covered a lot.
I just first want to thank you because I just loved your explanation of Trump and the continuity of government explanation. I've kind of heard of that, but you really put it in perspective and documented it, and I think that's going to be really helpful. I'm going to copy this video and send it out to certain people who need to see it. But anyway, okay, I have since you seem to have an idea of how Trump thinks and how he doesn't always do things straightforward, there's a lot of concern in Idaho because he has come out way early and endorsed a horrendous governor and a horrendous lieutenant governor. And if you could just give any insight into Trump's thinking, I'm not worried about it.
Okay, no, it's a great question.
Okay.
So guys, I want to be clear that these are my opinions. I am not read in. I don't have the bat phone where I move Jefferson's head open and I talk to the president. I think I'm right, and if I'm not right, I'm in the ballpark. It's my sense. But with endorsements and the messaging, there's actually a behavioral therapy study that talks about disorientation, disruption, that's used as a means to brainwash people. So when you look at Trump's tweet posts, what is he doing? He's disorienting everyone, jarring them. It's controversial, but give him enough time, and then usually he kind of stands vindicated, right? So right now we're all like, what in the world is going on with Tucker and Alex Jones and Candace and the Pope and everything else? So you have to understand this is a battle for your minds, your sanity, common sense, and so I'm looking at his post. I never take him at face value. I'm sitting there going, what are you trying to achieve?
What does he really mean?
What are you trying to alert us to? Is probably the better question of taking him at face value. So your question was really focusing on something that's slightly different, and so go ahead and tell me one more time.
endorsements for.
Oh, endorsement, okay, so endorsement.
Terrible
Okay.
leaders in Idaho.
Okay, so if I'm right about continuity of government, if I'm right about military tribunals, let me ask you this. If we as ours retain the House and the Senate, is that a victory?
No. We need to clean those people out.
Guys, we opened this with the Save America Act, and we can't get a vote with the existing uniparty. Another question, in 2020, because all of them were basically there, how many U.S. senators and congressmen actually called out and said out loud that the election was rigged and stolen? So why would we think that keeping these treasonous bastards in office would equate to a victory? So when I think through those questions and I go, why is he endorsing terrible people? If you've set a trap and you need to drain the swamp and create emergency vacancies, emergency elections, why would you want good people caught up in the middle of that? I mean, that's just my thinking. If I'm serious, let him keep endorsing the toilet.
Which basically is what it's doing all over.
Now, can special elections be held? Data point would be Gray Davis. There was a recall election in the early 2000s in California, and Arnold Schwarzenegger showed up, I think September, on the Jay Leno Tonight Show, announced, and 2 months later, he was governor of the 9th largest economy in the world. So I would love to see a vacancy through scandals like what happened with Swalwell. Maybe it's not just Swalwell, maybe it's hundreds of people. And we're going to have to force a clean election where people like Carrie Lake don't have to go through a grueling 2-year campaign. Perhaps she gets the special election.
Won, so she doesn't have to go through it.
Well, yeah, again, I don't know that. I just know that there's a historical predicate for short-term special elections. So if he's endorsing people that suck, my idea is, if I'm wrong about all of this and we don't have tribunals, we're all in trouble. Any other questions? Yes, sir. This gentleman right here.
Yeah, this may have to be one of the last ones.
Last
because
one.
of time.
Future proofs past, right?
I think so.
If you are right, if you are right about all of these things, and there's a possibility,
Yeah.
probability, the left isn't going to go down. If the roles were reversed, the administration was reversed, the right wouldn't go down without fighting. So do you see like a civil war coming out of this?
I think this question's a great one to end with, because you've just answered why Trump didn't do what we wanted him to do in 2020, which is if he would have seized everything with our nationwide brainwashing, you would have had massive civil war because enough people believed he was a tyrant trying to seize and hold on to power. Now, 4 years later, after multiple assassination attempts, indictments, being a convicted felon, and all of us are looking at the evaluation of Mar-a-Lago and everything else, he is so sympathetic with hip-hop crowds, youth, Hispanics. He has removed the one thing that would extend a kinetic Civil War type dynamic and has allowed himself to neutralize threats very quickly. That's very different. So before, when we were all confused and we didn't have 4 years to meditate on this, there's probably a lot of people that would say, he is a tyrant. Let's take out Trump. But we didn't, because something saved his life. The continuity of government framework is what saved his life, folks. That's what I think. So do I think civil war is likely? Yes, but quick. And I mean, watch out. So look, when he's telegraphing to you what happened with Maduro, and you had security detail from hardened paramilitary terrorists, they were using sonic weapons. People were bleeding from the nose, shitting their pants, for crying out loud. And they had no ability to fight back against our military. Why do you think he's releasing that information? When have you ever gotten a report in your entire life about something that Delta Force has participated in? Usually we use the SEALs, or we were told that like Delta Force we know exists, but we never talk about Delta Force. We're talking about it now. That's not for me, or it's not for you, it's for our enemies. And people that fund our enemies, that you want to go to war, it's going to be over before it started. So that's my opinion, I'm sticking to it. But I think we're done, but I'll take questions privately in the back if you guys want to talk, all right? God bless y'all.
Yeah.